There we go.
All right.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Educators podcast. I am, of course, Mr. Burden, and with me is one of the all-stars of White Oaks Elementary. And not only that, but she's an all-star mom, just celebrating the birth of a new addition to her tribe, if you will. Welcome, Miss Kopp, to the Educators podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So glad to have you. So glad to talk to you. I mean, we were in different hallways, but my associates knew your associates, so we definitely knew each other through word of mouth. But it's great. It's great to finally talk to you. And I do remember there was one. I think it was last year. It was like the year before. We had an activity where we had to get to know people we didn't know, and then we had like a brief 2 minute. You came over, and said, I want to get to know you, and it was like that brief moment. Where it was like, but we didn't have enough time to talk. And of course, from one person who likes to talk to another, that's we finally getting that moment. I see by your shirt.
The nitty gritty.
Yes, I see by your shirt. Testing.
It was a testing day. I am not a testing grade, but I love to wear jeans. So
yes. Well, let me just go ahead. I usually wait till towards the end, but just to say a special congratulations to you on being a mom. You get an official. You get to wear jeans as much as you like.
Mom jeans.
Yeah, right, mommy jeans. So again, it's interesting when testing goes down. I mean, it's the school building becomes a different deal now. Even for the non-testing grades, how is that affecting the lower grades when testing's going down?
It's all hands on deck, and a lot of the time it depends on the day, but behaviors can get a little bit crazier because they're almost aware that there are less adults that can handle the discipline.
Yeah.
But overall, it's been pretty good. They know that they need to be super quiet, and they love the Rock the Test video. We made another, music video this year. It was super fun.
Very nice.
That's one of my favorite things to do. We make those testing videos every year, but it hasn't been too bad. And typically, we try to keep them away from the hall, but going down for PE, sometimes they have to pretend to be a ninja, so quiet.
Yeah, for those who don't know, in the building, the PE, the gym is right there smack at the end of the 4th and 5th grade hallway. And granted, the 3rd grade hallway's way down the end of past 2nd grade, so they're kind of isolated. But the 4th and 5th grade hallway,
no foot traffic really down that way.
Exactly, but 4th and 5th grade's right there by the gym, so it's like it's almost like you got this organized chaos, and then the other side of it, you've got the testing going on.
Yes.
That's such an interesting thing. It's like, how do you adjust your teaching style or anything the day based on those when the upper grades are testing?
Yeah, that has to be. It's one of those things where you go back to the basics. It's a lot of positive reinforcement, a lot of whatever your incentives are. It. It's like you're back in September. I've always said May is like September. The beginning of the year, the end of the year is just like the beginning of the year. You really have to up the ante with a lot of things because kids are getting excited for summer and super antsy, and they're done. They're over it. So you really have to up the game.
This is something I've found with a lot of us teachers, and I got to ask you, like, do you start to notice, are they starting to act like 2nd graders? You're a 1st grade teacher, right?
Yes.
So are they starting to act like 2nd graders?
When I look back and I see, because I like to save, I try to do some things at the beginning of the year that are the same at the end of the year because I like to see the growth that they do. So even if it's just a writing piece or something, they really have grown so much. And that's one of my favorite things about teaching 1st grade is that you see so much growth. Yeah. They come in as these babies who are just learning to read. And they're just learning to write. And some of them still don't quite know how to spell their last name. And it's just, they're really learning and they grow so much. They're writing paragraphs by the end of the year and they grow. Typically they grow about 4 reading levels. It's really incredible to watch them jump from, we don't use DRAs anymore, that reading system, but they jump from like a 2 or a 4 to a 16 by the end of 1st grade. And they really start to look big. I look back at pictures and I was like, well, they were little.
Well,
I take pictures all throughout the year.
I just had a moment where one of my former students shared a video of him and his father learning how to drive,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I instantly gained so many more gray hairs just watching that. I was like,
Yeah.
"What? No, what happened to
How are you there already?
no, 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 no." And I've got kids that have graduated. They're in college now, and I'm just like, no, no.
That's
That's have you?
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. My first class ever. Let's see where are they at. They're freshmen in high school.
Oh wow,
My first class teaching. They're freshmen in high school, so I'm not there yet.
not
But
there yet.
I can't
The
imagine that feeling.
driving,
And
junior
graduating.
prom, graduation, and then
Oh,
then coming back.
college.
Hey Miss Kopp, remember me? I was the one
I
that
can't.
I smeared the aftershave on the panel. That kind of stuff. Those. And you said that you prefer kind of the lower grades
I
because you do
do.
get to see that. And
I do.
do you feel like the curriculum is exactly where it needs to be for first grade? Are the expectations a little too high, a little too
So
low?
I think there's a bit of both, and they're
Okay.
working on it now. Virginia Beach, the district is working on kind of making those corrections
Hmm.
because throughout the year, what they're working, especially with reading, math, I
Yeah.
think is fine. I think where they are for math, I think the curriculum is paced well. We revisit a lot of standards, and I think that they're making appropriate amount like jumps and
Hmm.
expectations. As far as reading goes, what they're giving them and what they're giving us in the curriculum to use at our small group table or even during our phonics lessons, because we do whole group phonics,
Hmm.
they don't match what's given on the assessment.
Yeah.
So have to read one, maybe two paragraphs for phonic lessons, as well as the decodable text that we read at our table. But the assessments can be 2 pages long. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's not
Yeah.
that doesn't, yes, it's decodable and it's using the features that they're supposed to be using, but it's too much.
Hmm.
It's too much for them. And I think that that's something that doesn't accurately, because they're going to forget what they're reading by that time.
Yeah.
They're not super fluent and they're not supposed to be super fluent yet. They're just supposed to be decoding and starting to comprehend in pieces.
Hmm.
So to give them 2 pages worth of material to read and expect them to remember, I don't think, maybe by the end of the year, but definitely not at the beginning of the year. And it's pretty consistent throughout.
I agree. In fact, one of my frustrations with curriculum has always been, and this has been pre-COVID, everything is
Yeah.
where the lessons we're teaching and the learning targets don't match the assessment, and the
Right.
assessment itself. Like I remember this big moment when we were looking over quarterly assessments in third grade, and we looked at so many of our students in the grade level bombed this one question on elapsed time. And so we were coming up with, okay, we got to reteach elapsed time, get all these things, blah, blah, blah. And I
Hmm.
look at my data and I'm looking at it, and most of my kids, they chose the answer that would have been correct if they read the analog clock correct. And I remember just going, wait a second, I don't think they understand elapsed time. They just don't understand
How
analog
to
clock.
read the clock.
Exactly. And the other side that I almost think it's kind of a tongue in cheek joke, but like learning targets, when you post your learning target to
Hmm.
kids that can't really read a learning target, it's
Uh-huh.
we know they're not really for the kids, but it's kind of
Correct.
funny how it's like, all right, kids, here's our learning target today, and it's like 2 sentences long, and then you go, okay, now here's how you spell cat.
Yep. Yep. That's what my phonics lessons feel like
Yeah.
a lot of the time. I'm a slides teacher. I
Ah,
I'm
nice.
I fully incorporated slides. I have literally from our morning bell to the dismissal bell slides.
Yep.
Everything is slides. And so my learning targets are incorporated in that. I do have
Hmm.
them posted as per the district, but I put
Absolutely.
them
They're very important and valuable to education. Just
absolutely. My kids would fail without a learning target. But
exactly.
I put it in there so I can talk about it with them. So it
Yeah.
forces me to be like, all right, what are we going to do today, guys? This is what we're going to do. And I don't know if it clicks with them or not, but it helps open up a conversation because some of the times they'll be like, well, wait, we already did that. And that opens up a good conversation about why we should be reading the same book more than once and why we should
Yeah.
be practicing a skill more than once. Because for reading, especially, we bounce back and forth fiction, nonfiction, fiction,
Hmm.
nonfiction. And we don't have in first grade, We don't have a separate block in the day to teach science and social studies. It is integrated into our language arts lesson in our nonfiction units.
Gotcha.
So when we're doing fiction, we'll talk about, okay, we're going to learn about character traits. We're going to learn about, setting and plot theme and whatever, and theme. That's towards the end of the year. And then nonfiction, we're going to do text features. We're going to learn about, ask and answer questions, things like that. And so, we already did text features. So then we talk about, well, it's really important that we really understand what text features are, and we need to, study again or whatever.
Yeah.
So it gives a conversation about doing the same thing more than once. Practice makes perfect type of thing. That's my other qualm, though, is I don't understand why, but our district never seems to line up what we're reading with what we're writing about.
Yeah.
Like if I'm reading a book about, for example, we changed all the books this year, but we kept the standards the same. But if I'm reading about Curious George and he gets into trouble at the museum, why am I writing about the time I learned how to ride a bike?
Yeah.
I should be writing something along the lines of, well, what makes me curious? Or I got into mischief once, something that makes sense with what they're reading.
Yeah. If you went to a museum, what would you be interested in? That kind of thing.
Exactly. Or what kind of museums have you been to? Just tying it together. Otherwise, it's like such an abrupt stop in the instruction to then start over all again. They were having us read 2 separate books. Read one book for reading and then one book for writing, which don't get me wrong, I love to read.
Yeah.
But I don't see the congruency. And I feel like it doesn't make sense to not have one large flowing language arts block. With broken up time, obviously, because the kids need things chunked, but
it's almost like
it just didn't make sense.
The people that are making the focus on the writing curriculum and the reading curriculum are two different.
There was no conversations between them.
There's no hey, what are you what are you teaching from there? Because and teachers I've talked to, we all kind of are on the same page. It's so much more fluid to just go right into, okay, now we've read Curious George, let's go into the museum part. It's already in their head. They're not having
exactly.
And you're saving so much time.
Right. And so that's kind of what we've done this year is we really focus. We started it last year, but we really focused this year on picking books that kids are more interested in.
Yeah.
That we could tie, because you can really tie any standard to any book.
Yes.
And if the story, we read one book that was like, I like to paint. I like to write. And I'm like, that's so boring for these kids. They don't want to sit there, and it just didn't make sense. They want a story, because especially my class this year, they absolutely love listening to a book.
Yeah.
They could sit and listen to a book all day long, which is wonderful. So I wanted to make sure we really foster that with giving them books they're actually interested in. So my team focused on that this year, was finding books that are relatable to kids these days and what they're interested in, to tie it into our writing, which made them want to write.
Absolutely. Like I remember,
which is a struggle.
Yeah, I do want to ask you about writing too, but it's interesting finding the books that really click with them. And that's one thing that I think a lot of us do is let's be honest, some of the books that are chosen are a little dry. They might have the Newbery, the Caldecott, they might have all these awards, but I don't want to hear about Blue Lou's saxophone on 8th Street. I don't want to hear about mailing May to the Himalayas. I want to read the kids want to read about the radioactive underpants. Correct. They want to read about those things. And
reading is reading.
Exactly. There's a character, there's a plot, there's a setting, there's all kinds of stuff like that. Switching gears to writing, because I think we're both on the same page, because you're kind of where they're beginning this whole thing, and then by the time they get to like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade,
the expectations for the upper grades.
Yeah. It's what are some of your biggest challenges and frustrations, but also like where do you see some opportunity with writing, especially at that lower grade?
So what I find the biggest obstacle and struggle is that it's hard for them. It is not something that comes natural. It is not reading and writing are, well, yes, they work together. They're 2 very separate things.
Yeah.
You can be an excellent reader and still struggle with writing, because you have to come up with the ideas on your own, and you have to then think about the spelling, and spelling is very hard. Now in 1st grade, it's all phonetic spelling. If they are phonetically spelling that is what they is a look for. And that's hard for parents to understand because they want to correct words.
Yeah.
Now, as the year goes on and the more we look at high frequency words, we want them using those high frequency words correctly. But if it's a word like science that they're not introduced to, we want to hear them do ends. Like we want to hear that. So that's a struggle because they're hard on themselves. It's incredible how hard a 6-year-old can be on themselves and, oh, I'm not good at this, or I'm never going to get it, that type of thing. So one of my favorite activities, I actually got it from Teachers Per Teachers, but it is an open-ended resource. It's called Transformation Station. And it's all of these different writing prompts. I think there's like 100. I honestly think there's one for every day if you printed them all out.
Cool.
And it starts them off with a picture. It could be a line or just a triangle or an X or a box, something. They turn it into a creation. So they're drawing the picture first, which normally they're not allowed to do. Normally we make them write first and then draw their picture after. So with these, they get to draw their creation first and then they have to write about it. They can write a story about it or they can just describe it. And I found that that's what makes even my most hesitant writers willing to at least produce a sentence.
Yeah, it's engaging them creatively right off the bat. Yeah,
exactly. So they get to, and everyone's is different. The first time we did it, because they were a little hesitant at first, because again, writing, they're always, the first one I did, I think I gave them an upside down triangle. And I challenged them and I said, don't make it an ice cream cone. I said, because I think all of you are going to want to make it an ice cream cone, make it something different. And then we went around and we shared what we made. And not one kid made the same thing.
Oh,
which
cool.
They thought was the coolest. They were like, whoa, we all made something different. So that I feel like was like a light bulb. And I was like, okay, this is really, I'm definitely going to use this with these kids. And it became their independent writing station. And we've done one almost every week.
See, that's really cool because, and I really think there is something to engaging the kids creatively first in something that they do enjoy. Because I used to have this one kid, bless his heart, he would go boneless anytime we had to do writing. You know what I mean? By boneless, we're like, all right, it's time for us to do writing. And he was like that.
Absolutely.
But like reversing that, like first by saying, like, okay, like we're going to draw and then we're going to write about what you drew. Like he's focused on the drawing part. And
it's already in it.
It's getting that mojo going. Well, now he's committed to it. And now I'm simply like, okay, now explain to me what you drew.
Right.
And he starts to talk. I say, no. Explain what you drew.
And it gives them more ownership versus me giving them a writing prompt about, well, tell me what your favorite book is, or tell me what your favorite movie is, or write about a time you went to the zoo. Not every kid's gone to the zoo. Yeah. Not every kid has a favorite book because they don't like to read or something like that. So it gives them more ownership. Another thing I like to use for writing, these funny picture prompts.
Yes.
And they are fantastic because there's, again, so many of them. There's some that come with words that you can use. I don't like to use those because the kids can't read the words. It's like rhinoceros and
triceratops
And I'm like, they can spell that. They can try to spell on their own. They could say dino for all I care, as long as they're writing. And they're funny little animals doing silly things. It's almost like a meme, but then they have to write about it. So they love those too. So those have been my top 2 go-tos for independent writing when I do reading groups.
And see, that's brilliant because that ties into like they're looking at memes all day long outside. Yes. They're seeing that kind of stuff. I used to do a thing where called Caption This every Wednesday. The morning work had nothing. It was just focused on. I would give them a picture, and then they had to write a caption for that. And I would always try to seek out pictures that they're familiar, like the Doze dog or something that
they've seen before.
But I said, you got to do a complete sentence, but you got to get and then we would share them, and of course the ones that were really funny, the kids got a big laugh, and so that encouraged everybody else to try to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. And it also giving things, like you said, giving things a quirky name has so much power.
Yeah.
You give something, you make it a quirky name, or so. I'm a huge fan of alliterations. I don't know why. I always have been.
Yeah.
So like morning meeting, for every day of the week, we have a different alliteration for our morning meeting. We have
Math Monday or something.
Yeah. It's typically Mindful Monday because these kids need to learn how to be more mindful. So we do some kind of calming or
and that's great to do on Monday when they're coming back from the wake. Yeah.
Yep. We have Talk to Me Tuesday, so they each get to just share something that they are bursting to share.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite would be Would You Rather Wednesday, when it also gives every kid a chance to share, but they just share with a finger, one or two, because, sharing everybody can take a long time. And then we have Thinking Thursday, which I usually put up an emoji riddle and they have to come up with what the answer is. And then Freestyle Friday, we dance because it's Friday.
Nice. It's Friday.
And we love to dance. It's just, like I said, I love an alliteration. It's quirky, and my kid, they know what to expect because it's the same thing, but it's different activities that fall under that theme.
Yeah.
So it's fun. We have a good time.
That's not, and they remember that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
And again, it's about kids being excited to come to school. If they know today is what would you rather Wednesday, they're already thinking, all right, what is Miss Kopp going to ask? What kind of crazy things, or free time for, or free fall Friday,
right.
whatever.
Freestyle Friday.
Freestyle Friday. Are you familiar with Jackbox games? It's an online bunch of different games. Well, they're different party games. Not all of them are appropriate for kids, but there's one called Quiplash, which is really fun. And I made a hard copy version of it, and a kid friendly hard copy version.
Yeah.
And essentially, what it is like two students would get the same prompt, fill in the blank prompt, and it's not necessarily like a Mad Lib, but more like the new, instead of pizza today, the cafeteria is serving blank. And then they had to come up with the answer, and then it was anonymous, so you didn't know who was who. But then it would be like choice A or choice B. So then I would read them, and I'd say, okay, today the cafeteria is serving toenails, and everybody goes,
yeah.
Or the cafeteria is serving ice cream, and then everybody goes, yay, and then they go, all right, A or B, and then they choose which one they like.
Okay.
But what I love about that is
it's almost like a would you rather that they're coming up with.
Exactly. So it kind of stimulates that thing. And I always felt like Mad Libs themselves were great.
I love Mad Libs. I use Mad Libs a lot when teaching parts of speech.
Yes, because like that noun, verb, adjective, all that kind of stuff, it really just clicks with them. Yep. I think that's tremendous. When we get them in third or fourth grade, they're at varying different levels of reading and writing and whatnot. And I just love the ability for them to just get that creativity stimulated and really getting excited.
And some of them are just, they do things that surprise you.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it doesn't have to do with writing, but one of my kids this year is so incredibly talented when it comes to drawing.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me, because I do a lot of, dot to dots in the morning for morning work. I don't want to call it serious morning work, but I guess it is more busy work because so many of my kids eat breakfast.
Yeah.
And I don't want them worrying about having to finish their morning work while eating their breakfast. But kids that don't eat breakfast, I don't want them just to sit there and be bored.
Yeah.
So I have usually a dot to dot or like a finish the picture type of thing where it's split down the middle and they have to draw on the other side, something like that, where it's still working the brain, but it's nothing, it's okay if you don't do it.
Yeah.
But one of my kids brought to me his own dot to dot that he made, and he went up to like 150. And when I did it, it was a police car. And I was like, this is really good. I took a picture of it. I was like, this is awesome. And another time he did spot the difference, and he drew down the middle, drew the exact same picture on each side, but made like 5 differences. And
that's
for a 6-year-old, I was like, that's super cool.
That's so cool.
Super cool.
It's not just a testament to that student's gifts, but also that your students, you're knocking out of the park when your students are thinking about your class outside of school. When they're thinking about you in Miss Kopp's class when they're at home. Yeah.
Something about this year, I don't know. They had like, when you just click with a class.
Yeah.
And I love all of my kids, and I've loved every class that I've had, but there is something about this year that has made, they're just like extra, extra special. And I don't know, I've had to leave them for 12 weeks because I had a baby.
Yep.
So it was like, I was checking in I was like, this is really hard. I miss these kids. I went to the school. I went to visit multiple times while I was on maternity leave because I missed them. I went for a class picture day. I was like, I don't want a sub to be in their picture. I want to be in the picture.
Yeah, it's gotta be me.
And I went and I was in the picture. I was like a month postpartum, just having a baby. And I was like, I don't care. I'm in the picture.
Yeah, here
I am. They were so excited to see me. They didn't know I was coming.
How do you feel? It's so. What is it about us teachers that like when we have time off or something, or like when we have to leave, we're still compelled to like. Did you feel like you had to? Oh, I gotta send an email to the sub about this kid, or I gotta do this. I gotta redo this lesson plan because I just thought of something. How
really hard to separate. Like,
yeah,
it's really hard. And I wanted to know what was going on, but at the same time, I didn't want to know what was going on because unfortunately, they were not able to find a long-term sub for me. So it was not as consistent as I would have loved for it to be for the kids. And that made me feel really bad. It's not my fault. It was not anyone's fault. It's just that there was no applicants that qualified. I mean, I think principal said 37 people applied and only 2 had even worked with children before. So what wound up happening was a regular day-to-day sub that we've had in the building just took the job multiple times. She didn't come every single day, but she was there most of the time. So she kind of knew the way of the class. It's just, I'm like, I left everything. I left very specific, like plans made and details. And I wrote notes about each kid because each kid has their own little, their own little mannerisms and quirks and things like gray areas I let slide. And they're 6. I'm not going to expect them to sit in their seat all day. I'm not going to expect them to be quiet all day long. Like there's certain give and take that I have. Hallway is an expectation. You are level 0 in the hallway just because it's only fair to the classrooms around you. But in the class, you can talk while you're doing your work if I see that you're staying on task, things like that. I try to give them some ownership and responsibility. So it was really hard to know that things were not being done, even though I left them all of the things, but
well, I know a colleague, I won't name names, but I know a colleague that her water broke while she was teaching. And as she's leaving, she's still giving little post-it notes like, oh, and make sure that it's like, you need to focus on this other task. Well, we got it. And she's just
see, that's super hard. It really is because my family is a huge priority and my job is a huge priority.
Yeah. So
finding the balance is really, really hard because I know that sometimes I'm either the better mom or I'm the better teacher. And I'm working on finding that balance where I'm really good at both.
Yeah. And that's hard because it is
hard.
This job requires so much out of us, out of our heart and soul. And like I always say that when because one of my favorite things is when a student calls me mom or dad, and then they get embarrassed for saying, I say, no, let me tell you, for the next 7.5 hours, for 7 hours a day, I am your mom, your dad, your teacher,
whoever
your psychologist,
you need
your nurse.
Who I am.
And all right, we're gonna take a quick break from solving all of the world's problems to tell you about a good friend of mine and a service she's offering. Are you tired of feeling like your dream financial future is out of reach? Are you struggling with overwhelming debt, trying to pay off your home early, or simply wanting to give more? Well, my good friend Vanessa Rutter Jackson is here to help. An educator and military veteran, Vanessa is here to guide you through the confusion and make your dream financial future a reality. With her certified financial coaching services, she'll help you create a personalized plan that sets you up to win with money. As an educator and a mother of 2, Vanessa understands the challenges of scraping by and stretching paychecks. She's been there, and she knows how to navigate the financial landscape to help you thrive. Don't let financial stress hold you back any longer. Take the first step towards financial freedom today with Rutter Jackson Financial Coaching. Reach out to Vanessa today for a free 45-minute consultation at varutter34@gmail.com or go to tinyurl.com/RJ Money Coach. That's varutter34@gmail.com or tinyurl.com/RJ Money Coach. Remember, It's never too late to take control of your finances and achieve your dreams. Start your journey to financial freedom with Rudder Jackson Financial Coaching today. All right, now let's get back to solving the world's problems with the most charming host on the interwebs.
I am.
And it's tough to then, switch gears and then
Yes.
make sure you're there for your family. Do you feel like though, and like from a responsibility standpoint, do you feel like there's a lot more on teachers today than there used to be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's a shift in parenting or if it's a shift in the system. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but I do feel like things are just stacking.
Yeah.
And it's you want to be able to juggle, but the balls are on fire, and then you have plates spinning on your head, but you're also standing on one leg on a tightrope.
Yeah.
That is what teaching feels at any given time. And for myself personally, a teacher with ADHD, who I'm everywhere at any time. I have Post-it notes everywhere because that's just how I remember something and I have to jot it down. And it's just, there are times I feel like I'm drowning.
Yeah.
And then you have to claw your way back up and you're like, okay, what do I do first? Which fire do I put out first?
Yeah.
Which thing has to get done? What are my priorities? What's going to sit on the back burner for another day because I simply need to just turn off my brain? And that's something I'm learning this year. Like, I'm learning to leave at contract hour, which is something I haven't done.
And that's so important.
It absolutely is.
And it's a tough lesson for us to learn because I used to be there 6-7 o'clock and getting chewed out by Deb, and it's like no, I get it, I get it, but it's like and it's like we get, and sometimes we get those ideas that click, and we're like, oh, we got I'm gonna go.
You run with this
exactly, and then you mentioned having trouble getting a sub. Why do you think there is a sub shortage, or it's difficult?
People don't want to teach. People just don't want to do it. Combination. I feel like it's the demands of the job and the lack of respect that we have as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
I am so tired of you're just a babysitter nonsense, or like, what do you do all day? You sit with kids, especially teaching first graders. Hello, if you have a first grader, times that by 16 and then welcome to my day. But also, I have to impart knowledge on them and make sure they turn out to be good humans and all of that other stuff. And I love what I do. I absolutely love my job, but it's taxing and it's not for everybody. And people are realizing just how taxing it is. And they're not even willing to step into the field to see if they can do it.
Do you think
many people they're just fed up with the nonsense?
Do you think it's just a compensation issue, or do you think it's so much more?
No.
No. Like, do you feel like maybe it's more to do with we need help rather than money?
Yes. Now, don't get me wrong. I would love more money. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
But to feel like when you're behind your door and you close your door that you're not alone, even though you're standing there alone, would be better than, an extra couple thousand a year. Yeah. I need to know that I have support. I need to know that when I'm struggling, someone is there to help me. I need to know that if I have questions, they will be answered unjudged. Things like that. Mm-hmm. Now, this year, I haven't really had any issues as far as discipline goes, but I do feel like that is something that is arising. Last year, I had a hell of a year.
I heard a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Your colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Was honestly, if I was pregnant last year, I probably would have left because the stress would not have been worth my child's well-being. Mm-hmm. It was rough. And to feel like I didn't have the support or the help or somebody who was in my corner. But now that's not to say that they didn't want to. It's to say that they're putting out fires everywhere else and they have a list of, priorities type of thing. So there just needs to be more bodies. There's not enough bodies. There's not enough people. We are so understaffed.
Do you have it? You don't like. It seems like only kindergarten, right? They're the only ones that have like a kindergarten assistant.
Correct. They're the
I
only ones
feel
with
like
aides.
every classroom could use an assistant.
Even a half a day.
Yeah.
Even like if they rotated out an aide for half a day
Hmm.
to do just another pair of eyes.
Yeah.
It does, they don't have, and if they don't want to do the, not to teach necessarily, they don't have to do, the actual lesson planning and instruction portion of it, but just another body to sit and maybe calm the overescalated child who is
Hmm.
now disrupting the rest of the class from their instruction, because kids do get overwhelmed and they do need to be regulated and they do need that help.
Yeah.
But I'm one person.
Hmm.
And if I'm helping that one kid regulate and I'm just telling my other kids, okay, just take out your Chromebooks, like,
Yeah.
where's the
It's not fair to them.
instruction?
Yeah, it's not
No,
fair to them at all.
no. And again, there's only so many outside support people in the building that can come and be like, hey, can you come, take little Susie for a walk?
But if they're already taking Billy and Tommy
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
the other kids for a walk, what is he got like he's gonna walk a whole line of kids
Exactly.
around the
And
hall?
you certainly can't let a 6-year-old go do the sensory path down the hallway by themselves,
Yeah.
because I need to watch what the 6-year-olds in the classroom are doing, and I need to watch what the 6-year-old in the hallway does.
Yep.
So it's just, there's just not enough people.
We need more. You definitely need
I
more
really think
support.
more bodies, more support would be a huge game changer.
What do you think? And is it what you said earlier? Is that like is it because there's that stigma of, oh, it's this job is just babysitting and I don't want to do that? And
I think that's part of it, but I don't know, there has to be money. Like there has to be money to hire people that could
Mhm.
be an aide. Like why is that not a thing? Why Virginia Beach is also, I've found they are very like anti-para for kids that could really probably use a one-to-one.
Yeah.
And it's not something that necessarily has to follow them till graduation. They could easily, that could be taken out of an IEP or like something like that.
Yeah.
But especially in the lower grades, I feel like there are a lot of children, not a lot, but some kids that would have benefited from a para that did not
Mhm.
get what they need.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel like it. I feel like a lot of the stuff that's there, it were good intentions, like
Yes.
positive. They like there's a like it, there on my darkest, most cynical days as a teacher, I would, I still thought, we'd always try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, even though sometimes
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
like, that's some BS right there. But
Right.
I think a lot of this stuff is good intentions. I think sometimes though they can't see the forest for the trees. I think sometimes when you get when you have upper administration, I'm talking beyond
Yep.
principal,
Outside the building. Yep.
you have a heavy staffing there. It that absorbs a lot of that pay, a lot of
Yeah.
the money that could
Yeah.
probably go to a para. And you
Right.
also have folks that they're not in the classroom, they might necessarily know what's needed. What are
Hmm.
how do you where are your and in addition to that, like, I think that also would help us feel more supported if there was more of a realistic, view from up on high.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I wish I had the solution, or I wish I
Hmm.
had, because I can last year I could be like, I could see myself getting burnt out
Hmm.
and just being done. But I really love what I do and I really can't see myself doing much of anything else. And but again, it's that, what, you have to weigh your mental health, you have to weigh your priorities, and right now it's working for my family and
Hmm.
I'm able to leave my classroom at the end of the day and not take homework. And I think for me personally, what helps is being in a grade level consistently now, because I was a grade hopper for a bit. I did second, I did fourth, and now I've consistently been in first. And that has helped. I've learned the
Wait.
curriculum. I've been
Mhm.
able to, I don't have to go home and study it or make sure I understand what, objective we're covering. I know it now and I know how to teach it. So I think that makes a big difference for me, because I,
Absolutely. You're brand new teacher each time you went to a different grade level. Yeah.
yes. And I do think that, and I tell this to people who are going to be, who, I'm hard on myself. I want to do the best. I want to be the best teacher. I want to be good. I want to be really good at my job. So I'm going to put a little extra effort in. And yes, that did look like staying after hours for a while. I did for a while, but, and I think in the beginning it was okay. I
Mhm.
do think you're going to have to put in a little more time and a little more effort first couple of years teaching.
Yeah.
I I I do, but I think it'll balance out later, and I think that if you can not get switched around in grades. Now, it was for me it was by choice. I know some teachers don't have that ability. Some are just forced to go to a different grade, and I think that if
Yeah.
you can stay in a grade level for a while, then you'll feel more confident and you'll have that ability to be like, "Yeah, you know what? I know what we're doing tomorrow. I'm going home."
Yeah. Exactly. And how important is leadership from above with with the morale, the your job perspective?
Big, 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 big part of school culture. Big part of how, like, I love going to work. I
Hmm.
love coming to work every day. I love the people I work with. I love my colleagues, and I absolutely love the people I work for. And that makes a big difference
Yes.
because I want them to see me doing well. Like, I want to be not recognized, but like, I just, even just getting that, like, no, no, we need you. Please don't, like, because I joked about wanting to be an ITS because I do still want that. That was something I
Hmm.
tried for last year, and that, which is instructional technology specialist for anyone who does not know.
Yep. Description
Um,
below. Yes.
and I'm still working towards that goal, but now having a third kid, I'm like, you know what? Let me have my summers with my kids and I can work towards ITS later because it's an 11-month job versus
Hmm.
10-month.
Yep.
But just hearing, like, when talking in brief conversation, hearing from your admin, no, 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 you're really good with the kids. Like, can we have you stay with the littles? Just hearing that. And, it's a good feeling. You know, that even though it's not said all the time, in the back of their mind, they still think like, yeah, you're really good where you are and you're good at your job. And I guess I'm someone you could say my love language is affirmations. I don't know. I like to know that I'm doing a good job. I like that reassurance.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it makes a difference that you can
Like,
have someone rooting for you.
do you think that being an educator, I mean, is that even really a choice for you other than or a calling? Like,
I think
is
it
it
was what
inevitable?
I think it
Yeah.
was totally inevitable. I mean, I'm also the only teacher in my family. Everybody else is in business, finance, sales, market, not me. I could not. I could not sit in a cubicle all day, first of all. I just can't sit in an
Ugh,
office by myself. I couldn't do it.
sounds
It's
so
not for me.
depressing. Yeah.
But I started teaching when I started student teaching or assisting when I was 14. I taught dance and I wanted to be an assistant to the instructor at my dance studio. And I was an
Hmm.
assistant for 4 years. And then I was made an instructor myself at my dance studio when I graduated high school. And then I continued when I went into education. And I've always worked with kids. I've been a nanny for years. I worked at a preschool for a little while. And I always knew I wanted to work with kids. And I absolutely love teaching. I mean, I have pencil earrings, for goodness sakes.
Yes. Yes.
I love what I do. And I truly don't think there's another job out there for me, which was why personally, that's what helps me get through the really tough days. That's just what they are. They're just tough days. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
going to get better. And for me, it's why I do like the other things that I do. So it's why I do Girls on the Run, because
Hmm.
then I get to see it's outside of the classroom, it's with different grades, and it puts a little bit more sunshine in my day if I'm not having the best day. Same thing with SEA. I love SEA, especially this year. The
Hmm.
Student Cooperation Association we had was fantastic, being able to spend time with those upper grade kids. Again, I teach a lower grade because I like teaching the lower grades, but I like still being a part of the upper
Hmm.
grades.
Yeah.
I want them to know who I am. I want to know that even though I'm not their teacher, they could still come to me if they need to talk or something like that. And I just love what I do. And I want to do book club next year with the kids. I want to get dragon readers up and running again. So it's fun. I do enjoy that stuff, the clubs.
There's something about that, like, yeah, because when I did robotics, I did
Yeah.
robotics for several years in my previous school. It's like it's almost like it, it's almost like a cooling, not cooling off, but it's you get a different group. Some cases there were kids I already had taught before or
Yeah.
something, but
Yeah.
you get that different interaction. You get that, it's the same kind of thing, but now you're out of that teacher situation, and now it's more.
Yes.
And it was almost like cathartic to sit there and
It
like, you know,
it
like
really is, because you were able to like have conversations that you wouldn't necessarily have in the classroom every day,
yeah,
and you reach them on a level, and also those kids are choosing to be there.
yes,
While
yeah,
yes, you were going to have kids in school that just don't like school, the kids in the clubs, they're choosing to be there. It is their choice. They want to be there.
hmm,
And that makes a difference too. So it's like recharging.
yeah.
You recharge the batteries and you're like, all right, this is it. This is why I'm here.
I found sometimes too those real dark days, and I always felt like my dark days at teaching had little to do with the kids. Like the kids would sometimes get on my nerves, but it was
Right.
because other things were putting me in that mindset. It wasn't them, but then there were many times where they're the ones that lifted me back up.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like those days where you go in and you're like, okay, I'm gonna have fun with the kids today. I'm not gonna worry about all
Yeah.
these fires I have to put out.
Which is crazy how much a mindset change, like it
Yeah.
truly does change your day.
Mhm.
Someone told me once, I don't remember who it was, force yourself to smile because it sends endorphins to your brain to say that you're, so like if you're feeling really down and blue, just force a smile until it turns
Mhm.
real, and it literally will send a signal to your brain to say you're feeling better. And I do that and I find that with my kids, if I'm feeling a certain way, they can tell,
Yep.
and it affects them. So I need
Mhm.
to check myself before, which is hard because we are human
Mhm.
and we go through, like, I'm not getting a ton of sleep right now because I have a 3-month-old. So I am a little crankier in the morning, but I have to just remind myself that it's not my student's fault that I didn't sleep
Yeah.
last night. It's not, I have to come in and take a deep breath and start the day. And personally, for me, it's why I wear things like this, quirky earrings and fun shirts, because it
Puts you
makes
in the
me
mood.
feel good.
Yep.
And the kids, they're like, "Oh, Miss Kopp, I love your earrings." I'm like, "Oh, thanks so much." And it just makes you like, it just sets the mood for the day.
It's genuine because there is such a thing as that.
Yeah.
I call it the lobotomized smile, where and I've
Yes.
had coworkers that are like,
Yes.
okay, kiddos, we're
Right.
gonna do this, and they're
Right.
like dying inside, and you're like, come on now, and the kids can sense when that's
They
fake.
can. They can.
But when you do stuff like that, it puts you in that mindset. It's genuine.
Yes.
You're on your game.
And I feel like those type of days, you have to take 5, maybe 10 minutes out of the day to put the curriculum to the side and do something silly, play a game, or do, a fun go noodle or something,
Yeah.
just to get everybody out of that kind of funk. You're not going to reach anybody if you're all cranky.
Yeah.
And there are times where you just have to stop what you're doing and wiggle. Like that's what
Yeah.
we call it a wiggle break. And sometimes it could be right smack in the middle of a lesson. And I'm like, you know what? We need a wiggle break. And we just will stop and we'll do something. And it
Yeah.
helps me too. Like I will do it with them. I'm not going to sit there and watch it. I will do it with them.
And
But
it breaks the tension. It breaks them out of that thing.
100%,
Exactly. And
100%.
if you think about it too, regardless of the grade, just the
Yeah.
concept of having a kid, okay, you're going to have to stay put for, let's say if we take out lunch and take out PE, you're going to have to sit where you are for 5.5, 6
Who
hours.
wants to do that?
It's
Nobody wants to do
terrible.
that. And I've learned to, along the way, I mean, you do just get better as you go.
Hmm.
I've learned along the way that my kids, I need to always need something hands-on.
Hmm.
So for math centers, I do 3 stations for math and 4 stations for reading. So for math, there's one technology, one hands-on something,
Yeah.
and then my table. And I try, so even if it's using, coins to count coins, the actual coins, they're using them, or pattern blocks to make pattern. They're doing something with their hands.
Hmm.
Sometimes I give them Play-Doh. When we were doing shapes, I said, "Here's Play-Doh, make shapes with Play-Doh," because they need to do something tactile.
Yeah.
And same with reading, they need something hands-on. And I find that you have to have a balance because they need to be on the computer. They need to do those districts, whatever the expectations for technology, which is fine. I do think some of those programs are really great, but they still need to be able to use their hands. And I found that that makes a big difference. And I'm learning myself how to better rotations and how to better my centers
Yeah.
that way. And it shows, because especially in your classroom management, when you have clear expectations and consistent.
Mhm.
So consistently, they have the same 4 activities, but what they do at that station will
It's
vary
different.
based on the skill. But
Yeah.
it's the same. They know, okay, I'm coming to the back table, I'm going to be building, or I'm going to be creating, or I'm going to be drawing. When I go to the front table, I'm going to be writing. When I go to my desk, I'm on my computer, something like that.
Yeah, they know what the task general task is going to be.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
it was similar in fourth and third grade where I'd have like language arts would have an achieve station, and then they would
Yep.
know that they achieve when they're done with their achieve 3000. These are the may do's below that.
Yes, and that
You
was
know.
something I learned too. You
Hmm.
need to have what they can do visibly posted somewhere
Hmm.
after they finish their work. Otherwise, you're going to get, what do I do when I'm done? I'm done. What do I
I'm
do?
done.
Miss
Yeah.
Kopp, I'm done. What do I do? So learning to give them, okay, you can get on this, this, or this, those 3 things.
Hmm.
That's what you can do when you're done. Same thing with having, so I don't know why I thought it was really cute. It's a slug. It's a little slug, but
Uh-huh.
it's a light, and he sits on my desk. His name is Sully. And when the light is on, you may not bother Miss Kopp at my table. You may not interrupt my table. You have to wait and raise your hand at your seat. And when I have an opportunity, I will come ask you a question, because it's during small group.
Yeah.
So I'm always meeting with kids. And I found in the past, if I don't give them a literal clear something, sometimes in the years past, I've wore a crown or something. In 4th grade, I used to just hold up a sign that said, "Did you read the directions?" Because they would always just ask me, "What did I do? What do I do?" So they'd come to my table and I'd just
Hmm.
be like, "Did you read the directions?"
I
But
had a sign
something
this.
that they
Yeah.
can visually signal them to be like, "Okay, I can't bother Miss Kopp right now," because otherwise they forget.
I always had the sign that says "Ask 3 before me." Like if they had
Yes.
a question, hey,
Yep.
and then of course we had to revisit what does that mean, because they would ask 3
Yes.
people that they already don't know the answer. But
Correct.
you got to find somebody. Somebody in here has the
Exactly.
directions. You
That's one of
know
my
what's going
things on my bulletin board too. It's just 3 fingers, and it signals 3 before me, and then they could come to me. But Sully has worked quite well this year.
on.
Sully has
Awesome.
worked quite well. So
And
I think I'm going to use that again next year.
there's something about having like characters and like they'll remember Sully.
Yes.
Like they'll years later they'll remember
Yes.
oh yeah, Sully. Oh, I remember that dude.
Yep.
And they kind of do that. And it's interesting too because you're at first grade, so your
Hmm.
kids were in kindergarten last year, so they weren't even
Yes.
in school during COVID. Like I mean, well, they're at the end of
Unless
COVID. They
they
were
went to pre-K,
pre-K. You're right, pre-K. They probably weren't
right?
in the
No, no,
yeah.
no.
Well, last year was COVID, but for up until like we had the masks up until
Right.
about
Right.
spring
So
break.
if they went to pre-K, their pre-K life was cut short.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas the
Right?
kids that
Yeah.
were third graders this year and fourth graders this year, they were really going through it in their first and second
They
grade.
were.
And one of the things I found in fourth and third grade is that there was there was this disconnect with like they were a lot more needy, and they
Yes.
didn't quite understand waiting their turn. And I always thought that like when you're home, it's like you're the one
That's it.
student. You are
Yeah.
that person, or you have a brother or sister, but that's it.
But
Now
that's
you've
it.
got 20 to 25 other peers that
Yes.
also need attention, and so
Yes.
there's that disconnect there. But
And I
yeah.
always try to make sure that when I'm saying something to them, I give them
Hmm.
a reason why. Like, I'm not asking you to raise your hand because I'm being annoying. I'm asking you to raise your hand because Miss Kopp cannot handle 14 voices talking at once. My brain can't handle it.
Oh,
And I always try to give them a reason why, because I do this in my parenting as well. They're kids. They don't know what we know yet, and they don't understand kind of that feeling. So I try to relate it to what they would know.
hmm.
So why do we have to walk in a line? Well, because if you walked in a ball, you'd probably trip over each other and someone would get hurt. So we walk one behind the other so I can make sure I have everybody with us and nobody gets hurt. They're like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense."
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's just me barking orders at them. Walk in a line, sit in your seat. Like, they don't always know why. They have to, and they don't think
It's so
like,
important.
they don't think, well, why do I have to stay in my seat? Why can't I just get up and wander around all day long? Well, if everyone was up and wandering around,
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of you, but there's, 20 of us in our class, we'd all be bumping into each other. So things like that, you have to give them the reason why. Otherwise, they don't know.
Do you feel like it also gives them a little more buy-in into the class community?
Yes, definitely sitting down and talking about those types of things at the beginning of the year and after any long break,
Mm-hmm.
revisiting, they feel like when they can share, well, and when we asking, well, why should we sit in our seat, or why do we need to raise our hand, and then being able to talk about it, that definitely
Mm-hmm.
gives buy-in for sure.
And I think that's essential to. I think creating a classroom community is essential to managing student behavior.
The first 2 weeks will dictate how your year is going to
Mm-hmm.
go. I firmly believe that, and I can say that because I wasn't there for the first 2 weeks of school last year because I had COVID, so I had to stay home.
Oh,
And my year started off rough because
yeah,
they had a different sub every single day who was basically just getting them home safely. That was all that sub was doing,
getting them on the bus. Yeah,
which is fine. I get it. Just making sure they went home the correct way. But when I came back into that, they had already been used to, touching all the things on the board and sitting in their chairs backwards. And while it seems silly, it's really hard to undo
yeah.
bad things that have been happening consistently and start fresh when they've already been like, well, I've already done whatever I want to do.
It's hard to
Type of thing.
unteach. It's harder to unteach
Unteach,
than to
yes.
teach. Yeah, it's
Yes.
like if they learn something wrong, then having to teach them the right way. It's you almost have to do it like 9 times, like nine
Yes.
more times in order for them to start to stick
Exactly.
in. What are some? This might be a loaded question. What are some What are some misconceptions do you think non-teachers have about teachers? And it's in the profession.
I just don't think, unless you are a teacher, I truly don't think you have any
Mhm.
idea what we have to deal with on a daily basis. And that's not just us griping. Like, if you are work, you have to worry about yourself, your one self. And you take your hour lunch break and you can maybe jot some notes down while you're doing it, or maybe you're sending a couple emails. We not only have to think about our one self, but the however other many selves we have in our classroom at any given time, their needs, their, they're sick. I had 2 kids go home throwing up today. Like, that's not something anyone has to deal with typically on a regular basis unless they work in a, pediatrician or in a hospital.
Yeah.
And what nurses are the other very underappreciated job.
Hmm.
But it's just you don't have it's they don't have to think about that kind of thing. Like, I had to think about, okay, well, little Johnny needs to sit next to a trash can today because I can tell that he doesn't feel well, but I sent him to the nurse and he doesn't have a fever, so he came back to my classroom. And what did little Johnny do 20 minutes later? He threw up. So it's just like that's not something that an average person at an average job has to think of. I don't have to think of, well, Susie didn't eat breakfast today, and she got here late and she typically eats breakfast at school. So I'm going to give her some of the snacks that I have because otherwise she's going to be hungry and she's not going to be able to focus because she's hungry. That's not something that people have to think of. All while we have to teach and they have to
Exactly.
pass and they have to do like and then, oh, you know what? Okay. So Tommy is throwing a fit. I have to just make sure everyone stays safe in the classroom because he's getting a little angry. I get it. He hasn't learned how to regulate himself just yet. So we have to make sure that, I show him that I'm here for him and that's not something you have to think about.
Yeah.
Let alone all of these school shootings.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that is a whole separate thing. It's not something that is on the back of most people's minds. It's on the back of mine when I go to work. And now when my daughter goes to kindergarten next year, like, it's just
Well, let's talk about that a little bit too. I mean, I don't know if you've
stressful.
been following the Newport News situation.
Oh, I have. Oh, I
Um,
have.
and again, I'll preface it this way. My teaching career has been awesome.
Mhm.
My frustrations have never been with the kids or my coworkers for the most part. There was one toxic little group, they call themselves the Mean Girls, but whatever.
Oh,
Um, other than that,
real.
it's been great.
Yeah.
Every team I've worked for,
Yep.
my frustrations have always been from the administration and not always the principal, because
No, it could be above.
in fact, just, people know this already about me, that, I left the classroom this year, and it was actually in spite of having what I felt like was the principal I was wanting,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna, oversell it, but it
No,
was,
I get it. I
for
do.
me, it was almost like it wasn't enough, because I felt like I was finally working for somebody that really understood us as teachers, but there was so much else
Right.
involved, and there was some
There
help
was so
too, but
much more. Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
but also a lot of it was above her control, and I
Yes.
had to step away. But it kind of going back to the calling thing. I'm teaching virtually now. I'm teaching students in China and Canada online, and
Mhm.
it's like, now, granted, it's like I'm teaching at night, and it's kind of a
Right.
different schedule, but and it's
Right.
crazy too, because there is that different perspective, but they're still kids. Like
Yeah.
the gimmicks that worked in the classroom are working online with me too, like just
Yeah.
the rapport and the telling why we're learning this kind of stuff and like that. But I safety was also a concern, and this late,
Yes.
and I don't feel like, I feel like there's some major changes that need to happen in the education system as a whole. And
Yes.
I think when you motivate certain positions from a financial standpoint rather than a student growth standpoint, I think a
Mhm.
lot of us have forgot, a lot of the folks in control have forgotten why education exists.
Exactly. It
And I
is
mean, that isn't education. What is the purpose for education in your opinion?
to teach. I mean, to grow yourself as a person and to eventually go out into the job market.
Mhm.
Now, not everybody is going to become a doctor, not everyone is going to be an astronaut, but I'm certainly not going to tell them that they can't be. They can be whatever
Yeah.
they want when they grow up. But realistically, you're going to have kids that go into trades, but all of that is still education. You still have to
Mhm.
go to a trade school. You still have to learn how to be a mechanic and be a plumber. And I think people forget just how valuable teachers are and just how much weight that we do bear because we are in like we're raising the future. That is it,
Yeah.
it sounds cheesy and cliche, but it's true. And they're going to remember kids are going to remember the teachers they loved and the teachers they didn't. And there are some people that are in teaching that should not be,
Mhm.
and there are some people that have unfortunately left teaching that should be.
Well,
But
but
you
that's
didn't leave teaching. I actually didn't know you were teaching online. That's awesome.
it's been great, and you never know. Couple
You
years,
don't know.
you never know. In a couple years, I might stroll back into the classroom. You never know what might happen.
Yes, exactly.
I think that, it goes back to that calling. I also do think there are some times where those good teachers get burned out, because I'll be honest, I got to the point where I was resenting coming in, and I
Yeah.
was starting to feel like I was resenting the kids, and that's when I knew I had to get out, because it's not their fault. It's
No,
not. In fact, they were darlings, and bless their hearts when they found out I was leaving.
I
Um,
know.
right, Ms. Riley had to come in and console. I broke my
I
heart. I was
know.
in tears. But it was like, that's because that's what pulls us in. That's that same
Yes,
thing. Like, and I second guessed leaving for every day that I was there. I was like, oh, do I really want this? But
I know.
there's that thing. I think sometimes good teachers start to get burnt out, or they start to get jaded, and they stay longer than they should for whatever reason. And I think that comes across sometimes. And then that sometimes
Yes.
we have those gem teachers that are just as rock star in their 30th year as they were when they started.
Yes.
And yet I don't feel like administration values that. I actually attended. I was at Hermitage Elementary, and we were one of
Uh-huh.
the first schools that kind of got into the PBIS.
Mhm.
And I was at the summer training, and there was one table where it was the folks from downtown, which they don't want us calling
Central
it
office.
downtown. Yeah, central orifice, but they were there, and I remember I was just walking by during a break, and I heard them talking about, yeah, well, that's why we got to get rid of these veteran teachers. They just need to retire. And they didn't know that I was standing there.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
but it was like that attitude, I think, had perpetuated down in their minds that the veteran teachers are bucking their authority, because let's be honest, and if you have only 3 or 4 years of teaching experience, and suddenly you get a job downtown, and now you're coming into the building trying to tell a
Right.
veteran teacher that their word study is wrong,
They're gonna be a little
it's going to be like,
crotchety.
okay, kid. It's going to be like, all right, kid. Yeah, thanks for that.
They're gonna be a
And
little.
I do think
And
that.
now
Oh, go ahead.
I think there's a way to do that too, because
Yes.
there are we are evolving, and we're as educators, we're still constantly learning, and we are learning this year that we're learning a new program in science of reading and all of that. But there's a way to do it.
Hmm.
There's a way to approach those veteran teachers that have been doing an amazing job for years with, an older curriculum, without just being like, okay, this is what we've done. We're not doing it anymore. This doesn't work. That you can't do this any like you have to the same way we talk to the kids, you have to appreciate what they're doing first before
Yeah.
you throw a new, bunch of stuff at them.
Yeah. All right. We're
And,
getting rid of Schoology. We're
you
going to
know,
campus. Sorry.
oh, you only learned how to use it 3 years ago. Time to work something else.
Well, and
Wasn't
I
a
think
fan of
this kind
that.
of goes back. Like, this also goes back to that financial thing too, is where I feel like that's a decision that was made financially.
Yeah.
Like, oh, our Schoology deal has run out. We're going to
Yep.
save money by going to Canvas, rather than really thinking about how it's affecting the teachers. Really
And the kids.
affecting and the kids
Another
having to
program the kids had to learn.
navigate a whole new thing. And I feel like that's kind of the one of the major problems. I would love to adopt us more similar to Japan, where we could eliminate a lot of top heavy administrative
Yes.
positions, and instead of like all this other stuff, part of your recertification would be to do a 1 or 2 year tour of duty downtown,
Mhm.
involved with curriculum or involved in some of these
Right.
decisions, and then knowing that you're going to come back to the classroom, so that if any of your stupid ideas you're going to have to deal with when you're back.
Yep.
I mean,
Exactly.
so you're going to make sure it's on point, but also having that perspective and understand, having a foot in
Yes.
the classroom, knowing that, and an appreciation.
And on the flip side, having people that have maybe been in central office for too long come and take some sub jobs that are available at
Yep.
any given time to put their foot in the door and remember, oh, this is what they're dealing with. That's right. They have a lot on their
Yeah.
plate. And
And not just a once glorified day
nope,
where they can then
nope,
say, I did this. Like, take multiple days. I mean, if there's a
correct.
sub shortage,
Help
why
us out.
we need to see that. And they need
Yeah,
to see, they need to not only see that, but also see maybe some of the stuff they're expecting us to do isn't working out.
correct.
On top of that, then you throw the safety issue in there.
Yeah,
And again, we're working miracles. I feel like, we're preventing some possible stuff going down because of
that's
our
what we're
rapport with
trying to do.
students.
That's
I
what
mean,
we're
there's
trying to do.
you and I both
Absolutely.
know one particular student that I think when he got a certain teacher as his teacher, it kept him from being more violent than he could have been.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have seen that even as young as first grade.
Yeah.
A student I was head of my class last year, it's one of those things where discipline is not always black and white.
Hmm.
And my favorite quote is what's fair is not always equal.
Yeah.
And I have different expectations for every single child in my classroom. And if that one particular child's expectation for the day is to, not leave the classroom without, let's say, for example, to not wander around the hallways without, like, to stay in the classroom as a safety
Yeah.
issue at 6,
Hmm.
and he just puts his head down all day and he doesn't do any work, fine. He stayed in the classroom. Like that, there's
That's a
levels,
victory. Yeah.
exactly, that's a win. Like I have this amazing student this year. She's one of my all-time I just love her so much. I absolutely love her. No favorites, but I love her.
Yeah.
But last year, she was known as the homing pigeon. She was a runner. She used to just leave, but she would eventually make her way back. Who's the homing pigeon? Always come back where
Yep.
she belongs. But the fact that this year she has went in my care while I was there, she did not like when the subs was there, or any sub, not just the
Yeah.
long-term sub, but any sub. She has eloped probably less than 10 times all year.
Hmm.
And even when she did, she would leave the classroom and sit by the water fountain.
Yep.
And
Right
she
around the corner.
and I worked with her on it, and I said, "Hey, if you need to leave, just let me know. Just say, 'Hey, Miss Kopp, can I
Yeah.
just go re'" She called it a reset. She goes, I just need to reset.
Oh, that's nice.
And I was like, I love that. I said, if you need to reset, just you have to let me know just so I know where you are so I can know that you're safe. And she would. She would go out and and I trust her that she will come back, and she does. She always does. She takes
Yeah.
a timer with her. She sits for 3 minutes and she comes in, and if it's not enough, she'll ask me, Miss Kopp, can I reset again? And I said, yeah, okay, no problem. And there's just certain things she has struggles with walking in line with us. She doesn't like to stay with the class. So I will say,
Mhm.
you may walk ahead and meet us at art. And she will. She'll walk and she'll meet there. That's what accommodations are. That's what meeting kids at their level looks like.
Yeah.
Not every kid needs to walk in a line. Is she running down the hallway to the class? No, she's walking to art and she's waiting for us there. Why should she have to wait in line with everybody else just because? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I
Eh,
feel like that's so important when it comes to discipline, and you need to know your kids and you need to have a level of gray area. It's going to be different.
you
And
gotta you gotta
that's what I
choose your
think.
battles. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And not every kid is going to do all their work every day, or not every kid is going to read, 20 minutes every. It's just not going to happen. And you have to
Mhm.
have realistic expectations for each of your kids. That's not to say I don't set high standards, because I do,
Yeah. Mhm.
but you have to meet them where they are before you can take them where they need to go.
I do want to continue the discussion about safety, but I want to just jump in
Ah, yes.
about the difference between like how the focus on student growth versus a standard. Like where do you
So
feel
important.
where are you at? I mean, again, we're testing, which
Yep.
I'm from those testing grades, and you've
Yes.
taught the testing grades.
Been there briefly.
The like I see the value. Do you see the value in the standardized testing? Do you see value in focusing on standards, or
No.
are you more? Is there a balance, or do you think we really should be more growth
I
oriented?
think it should be more growth oriented. And maybe that's the inclusion teacher in me, because I find it so difficult to say we have these IEPs and these accommodations and these specialized,
Mhm.
education set up for these kids who are taking the same standardized tests as everybody else. Well, yes, maybe they're taking it in a small group setting, or yes, they're having it read
Read
to them.
aloud, yeah.
They they're still taking the exact same test. And I just don't see how that's a fair assessment of
Mhm.
their level of knowledge or their expectation for kids that are have an individualized education plan. But also, so take it this way, when babies are born, they get on a growth scale and they're measured. Everything is about having, gaining weight, and because you want the baby to grow.
Yeah.
Not every baby is going to grow at the same rate. And some kids are going to be lower on the percentile and some kids are going to be higher on the percentile. My daughter
Mhm.
happens to be more petite. She's lower on the percentile. My son was a giant and he is still off the charts. It's the same thing with learning for students. They're not all going to learn at the same pace. Some might take smaller steps or some might take giant leaps. But eventually, most kids are going to learn to read, especially if they don't feel that pressure of a standardized test.
Yeah.
I just feel like growth should be measured more. Like my students this year, everyone made growth. Are they all where they are should be for the district level? No. But did they all make growth? Yes. Do they all feel good about themselves because they made growth? Yes.
And that's huge.
And I feel like that is huge. And again, college is not for everyone. Not everyone is going to go to a job that needs a degree, and that's okay. I feel like it's more important to learn how to work in a community, which is a classroom. A classroom is a
Mhm.
community, to learn teamwork, to learn how to honestly, to learn how to disagree. I think it is
Yes.
so
Yes.
powerful to learn how to disagree with someone.
Conflict resolution.
You're not going to agree on everything,
Mhm.
especially I tell my students all the time, I get along with everyone in the building. I'm not friends with everyone in the building, and I don't agree with everyone in the building,
Mhm.
but I get along with everyone in the building and I know how to act appropriately around everyone in the building. And that's something that kids need to learn and that you need to
Big
have
time.
for society. And teaching is so much more than just teaching a standard. So
Absolutely.
much more.
It's like, and again, we're seeing, I think we're starting to see a shift away from the quote unquote cancel culture, but it does seem like
Yeah.
in society that you have to agree with everything I believe
Yes.
or I'm not going to talk to you.
Correct.
And teaching our future generations that, hey, you can disagree on pineapple on pizza, but that doesn't, if you like pineapple on pizza and they don't, that doesn't mean you have to not be friends with them. And I think that's it. Is that are we getting the Oscar
It
music?
is.
Wrap it
I'm
up.
so sorry. Baby needs to go to sleep.
Absolutely. The only the one final question I had for
Yes.
you, and if we can make this quick though, but like
Absolutely.
going back to the Newport News
Yes.
thing where the school board then came out and said that the teacher can't file a lawsuit because it falls under workman's comp.
No.
And then now they're
No.
kind of getting in the ear of the parent and saying, well,
No.
the reason he brought the gun was his autism manifesting.
No.
Do you feel like there needs to be some major culture change in how teachers are viewed and
100%.
and the
I
lack
am
of
not a
trust?
police officer. I don't go to work thinking that it's going to be workman's comp if I get shot. Like that is so absurd. And the fact that they are, it just, the disconnect. How can that be said? They're looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for any way to save their own skin when literally lives are at stake. And do not blame the child for having autism for why he brought the gun. First of all, if you have guns in your home, fine. Lock it up and keep it unloaded.
Yep.
There's no reason for a child, especially a 6-year-old, to have access to a weapon that they're getting from their home. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And to say that it is workman's, that I was like, I saw red to hear. I love my job and I would do anything to try to keep my kids safe in a situation, but I shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to think about, well, I need to keep my Chromebook cart here because I can wheel that in front of the door and lock it and it's really heavy and it can block the door that way. So I really need to keep it like I should not be thinking about that when I'm setting up my classroom at the beginning of the school year. But then I'm like, well, maybe I should keep it closer to the window because what if they're outside and wanting to I shouldn't be thinking that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That should be,
it's
you should feel safe coming to
school. That's 100%. I did not become a teacher because I want to be a hero. I don't want to wear a bullet vest to school. Like that's not what I'm looking for here. No, not work. That made me so angry.
What?
Oh my God. That made me so angry.
It's frustrating. And again, I think it's a symptom of the skewed perspective that education has right now. You know, it's there's legal stuff and all that. But Jackie, I really appreciate you hanging with me.
Absolutely.
We could do another. Let's do another hour this
I
summer.
would love to do another. Yeah. Yes. That would sound great. I'd happily.
But in the meantime, I want to say congratulations. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going with the powers vested in me. I'm going to let you wear jeans all summer.
Woohoo.
So you get
That's a double jeans pass, right? So that works.
Yeah, you get double
and next year. Okay,
and next year as well. So you've got it. It's, you know, if anybody questions it, tell them to talk to me. Send me an email.
Perfect.
But Jack, any final words of wisdom to the teachers this last couple weeks for Virginia Beach teachers?
We're almost we're almost done. We're almost done. We can do it. We've got 11 days and then it's summer. Yes, the beacon of light.
Awesome. Well, Ms. Kopp, thanks for joining me today. It's just been another episode of the Educators Podcast. I am Mr. Burton. Please like, share, and comment. What are your thoughts on how should teachers be treated, and what are some things that you think need to be changed in the education system? Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, and here comes the summer. Woo!
Summertime.
Catch full episodes of the Educators Podcast every Thursday at 4 p.m. Real educators with the real issues in education. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, take care of yourself. Jeans passes to anyone who likes, shares, and comments on this video. Have a great week.